My grandmother Eliza was the anchor of my life. To me, she was the smell of baking bread, the warmth of a hand-knitted blanket, and the patient wisdom in stories told on her porch swing. She lived a simple, quiet life in a small house filled with memories. When she passed away at 87, she left me that house. The will was simple, with one peculiar exception. It contained a clause that read, "To my grandson Leo, I leave my home and all its contents. I also leave him the key to the room at the top of the stairs with the hope that he will understand." That room. For my entire life, it had been a gentle but absolute mystery. It was the only door in her house that was always locked. As a child, I'd ask, "Grandma, what's in there?" She would smile, her eyes crinkling at the corners, and pat my head. "Just memories, my love. Old dusty things not interesting for a young boy." When I grew older, she would simply say, "Every person needs one room that is entirely their own." I respected it, and the mystery became a simple, accepted fact of our lives. After the funeral, the lawyer handed me a small, ornate iron key. It felt heavy in my hand, heavy with the weight of 30 years of unanswered questions. That evening, I stood before the door, the wood old and faded. The house was silent for the first time I could remember. No hum of the radio from the kitchen, no gentle creak of her rocking chair. I slid the key into the lock. It turned with a deep, satisfying click that echoed in the stillness. I pushed the door open, expecting dust, old furniture draped in white sheets, perhaps boxes of forgotten photographs. I was wrong. The room was not for storage. It was an office, and it was immaculate. A large oak desk stood against the far wall, its surface clear except for a single, unlit lamp. The walls weren't covered in faded floral wallpaper like the rest of the house, but in detailed maps of 1960s Berlin, Cold War-era Eastern Europe, and South America. They were dotted with tiny colored pins. On a shelf sat a sophisticated shortwave radio, the kind I'd only seen in old spy movies. Beside it were books, not novels or gardening guides, but volumes on cryptography, Russian literature, and advanced mechanical engineering. My heart was hammering against my ribs. This wasn't the room of a baker and a gardener. This was the room of someone else entirely. I moved towards the desk and slowly, hesitantly, pulled open the top drawer. Inside I found several passports. All had my grandmother's picture, taken at different ages, but each bore a different name: Anya Schmidt, Elena Petrova, Catherine Dubois. My mind was reeling, trying to connect the woman who taught me how to tie my shoes with the face staring back from a French passport. In a lower drawer, I found a small, leather-bound journal. I thought, finally, an explanation, a diary, but it wasn't. The pages were filled not with feelings, but with meticulous, coded entries, dates, cities, and cryptic phrases. Package delivered in Vienna. Moneyman contact compromised. Extraction from Prague successful. It was a ledger of a life I couldn't comprehend. I felt a dizzying sense of vertigo, as if the floor of my entire childhood had just fallen away. My grandmother wasn't just Eliza. She was someone else, someone who moved through shadows and spoke in codes. I flipped to the very last page of the journal. The handwriting here was different. It was shakier, clearly written much later in her life, and for the first time, it was addressed to me. "My dearest Leo," it began, "if you are reading this, it means I have failed to outlive my past. I have made many promises in my life, but one is more important than all the others. A debt that was never settled. Because you are my blood, that debt may now fall to you. They may come looking. If they do, your only protection is the silver lion." The silver lion? What did that mean? I spent the next hour searching the room, my hands trembling. I found nothing. I finally stumbled back into her bedroom, the familiar scent of lavender and old books doing little to calm me. I opened her jewelry box, a place I knew well from helping her fasten necklaces, and there, tucked beneath a string of pearls, was a small, exquisitely crafted lapel pin. It was the head of a lion, cast in gleaming silver. I held it in my palm, the metal cold against my skin. It felt like the key to everything, and I had no idea which door it opened. A week passed in a blur of confusion. I couldn't sleep in the house, feeling like a stranger in my own memories. I'd look at a photograph of her smiling, holding me as a child, and wonder what secrets were hidden behind that gentle gaze. Then, one evening, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find a tall, elderly man in a perfectly tailored gray coat. He looked to be about my grandmother's age, with sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to take in everything at a glance. He didn't introduce himself. He simply opened his hand, and resting on his leather glove was a silver lion pin, identical to the one I had found. "I believe you know why I'm here," he said, his voice a low, cultured rumble with a faint European accent. Eliza made a promise. I let him in. He sat in my grandmother's armchair, looking perfectly at home. His name, he said, was Mr. Sterling. He and my grandmother had been colleagues. "Your grandmother," he began, "was one of the finest intelligence officers of her generation. She wasn't a spy in the way you see in films. She didn't topple governments. She saved people. Her specialty was extraction, getting scientists, artists, and thinkers out from behind the Iron Curtain." He told me a story from over 40 years ago, her final mission. She was tasked with extracting a brilliant geneticist from East Berlin who wanted to defect with his research. The research was groundbreaking, and the other side would do anything to keep it. The mission was compromised. There was a chase, a confrontation at a checkpoint. "The scientist was killed," Sterling said, his face grim. "But he had a 7-year-old daughter. Eliza had promised him she would get the girl out, no matter what. And she did. She made it across the border with the child, but not the research." I was hanging on every word. "So what happened to the girl? And the research?" "Eliza gave the girl a new life, a new name, a new history. She was adopted by a quiet family in a country far away. She grew up never knowing who her real father was, or the world she came from. As for the research, the scientist was clever. He knew he might not make it. He converted his most critical data into a sequence, a long, complex string of information, and to ensure no one could torture it out of him, he encoded it into the one thing no one would ever think to look for: a lullaby he had composed for his daughter." I stared at him, speechless. The girl, now a woman, has no idea that the simple tune she remembers from her childhood is one of the most valuable secrets of the Cold War, Sterling continued. For decades, the file was considered closed. The secret was safe, but things have changed. A new political regime in the scientists' home country has reopened the old files. They are aggressive, and their intelligence service has discovered the existence of the daughter. They are hunting her. He leaned forward, his eyes locking onto mine. Before she retired, Eliza created a final failsafe, a way to get a message to the daughter, a warning and instructions that only she would understand. But she could never deliver it herself. She was being watched, even in retirement. She entrusted the final step to the one person no one would ever connect to her old life: you, Leo. The room spun. This was impossible. Me? An ordinary man who wrote history articles for a living? "What do you want me to do?" I whispered. "Your grandmother's plan is in motion," he said, standing up. "We need you to deliver the message. Approach her. You are the missing piece, The stranger with a familiar face she was told to one day expect. You can do this and disappear, or you can refuse. We will try to protect her, but without Eliza's final message, our chances are slim. Her life will be in your hands. He placed a sealed envelope on the table. This contains her name, her location, and your instructions. Your grandmother wasn't just leaving you her house, Leo. She was leaving you a choice. You can remember her for the apple pie she baked, or you can honor her for the lives she saved. He walked to the door and paused. She was immensely proud of you. She believed you had her strength. I hope she was right. And then he was gone. I am sitting here now, in her quiet house, the sealed envelope on the table in front of me. The world I knew, the simple, safe world my grandmother built for me, is gone. In its place is a world of shadows, secrets, and a 40-year-old promise. I thought my inheritance was a house filled with memories of a life that was over. I was wrong. It's a mission, a legacy, and the beginning of a life I never could have imagined. My grandmother didn't just teach me how to bake. She taught me that some promises are worth everything. And now I have to decide if I'm strong enough to keep hers.